I do ask,
I
please
am.
remember to, oh, thank you. Please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. So there's a mute button right in the upper right corner. You can see that. There's also a little camera button. We don't expect you to put yourself on camera unless you'd like to. I will be on camera while I'm talking, and then I'll go off once I stop talking. Also, if you do have a question, the best place is there's a little, you can see a little smiley face with a hand up like that. I will push mine and you can push on that, and then it will show that I have a question. It'll raise a hand, and that way we can call on you. There will be an opportunity also at the end of the presentation, each one of the presentations, to ask questions at the end. But if you do have a question as we're going through the presentation, if you would raise that hand, I will watch that, and Melissa will watch that to make sure that we're able to get to it. The other thing is
there's also a chat function too, so that
yes,
would be another option.
Good point. There's also a chat function. So there's a little box up in the right, upper right-hand corner there that looks like a little bubble with words in it. That's the chat function. So if you do put something in the chat, you can put a question in the chat, and we'll try to answer it from there too. The other thing is the materials on this will be posted to the grant website, the CETA website. And we were talking about this a little earlier. It's www.gcpud.org/CETA. Those materials will be posted in both English and Spanish. And we do have someone here, Veronica was kind enough to join us, who does, if you do have a question in Spanish, she would be able to help us answer those questions and help direct your questions to us. I guess we'll go forward from here. Next slide, please.
Do we want to let Veronica give instructions for
go ahead,
link to the
if you don't mind,
page?
just in case somebody is up there. Yes, thanks.
La información sobre el programa de CETA se puede encontrar en nuestro sitio de web, y la dirección para encontrar esta información se deletrea GRANT, es www.grantpud.org barra hacia adelante BLOG barra hacia adelante otra vez CETA, y se puede hacer clic en el botón que en color azul que dice haga clic para español.
Thank you. So our agenda today, Melissa is going to give an overview of the CETA legislation. She'll do that in a couple slides. Then I will come in, kind of do a little bit of a tag team here. Grant, I'll talk about our current resource portfolio, give an overview of that. And then Melissa will kind of take us home. She'll do PUD's Clean Energy Implementation Plan, draft Clean Energy Implementation Plan. Talk a little bit about customer engagement, which we do have a survey question that we would love to have you answer for us. And then we'll talk next steps. And then after that, we'll hand that off to Energy Services. I think Eric, you'll be taking that. Eric Hector will take the second portion of this presentation. So I'm going to hand it off to Melissa, and she can talk a little bit about the CETA overview.
All right, thanks, Rich. I'm Melissa Lyons, and I'm going to just provide a brief overview. We have provided a link to Department of Commerce's website on this in the presentation. There's lots more information on that page, rulemaking, links to the law, links to Utility Transportation Commission information. So if you want to dig in further, there is more information. We're just going to provide a high-level overview today. So CETA, or the Clean Energy Transformation Act, the long name, was signed into law by Governor Inslee in May of 2019. It does apply to all electric utilities who serve retail customers in Washington State. There's a kind of an overarching requirement, which is that utilities are going to transition to clean, renewable, and non-emitting resources. It happens over time, and so there are a couple key dates. The first one is by the end of 2025, all Washington customers will not be served by coal-fired generation. We're going to mention that one today. We're not going to spend a lot of time, or actually any more time on that today. We are going to be focusing on the 2030 requirement because it's the first standard, which is called the greenhouse gas neutral standard. And it is a requirement that all retail sales of electricity to customers beginning in 2030 be greenhouse gas neutral. There is, just to kind of provide a little more detail on that, there is a requirement that we use renewable and non-emitting generation for 80% of retail load. The other 20%, up to 20%, a utility can actually use emitting generation. However, if it does, then there is a requirement to offset the emissions with the use of alternative compliance. And so the sum of the two pieces, the 80% and then the up to the 20% is the 100% of load being greenhouse gas neutral. The last hurdle or the last requirement is in 2045, there's a requirement that all retail sales of electricity must be from renewable and non-emitting resources. At that point, there will be no more use of alternative compliance that's allowed under CETA. As Rich mentioned, we're talking about the Clean Energy Implementation Plan. So there are several pieces to CETA, but one of the first things that we are going to be submitting is what's called a Clean Energy Implementation Plan. And it is a short-term plan that covers the near-term 4 years, prompt years. It's due by the end of this year. And so we'll submit it by January 1st of 2022, and it's going to cover how the district is going to comply with some different pieces of CETA for 2022 through 2025. And so specifically what we're covering in this first presentation is our clean energy strategy. So how the renewable and non-emitting piece, the specific actions we're going to take for 22 through 25 to show progress towards the 2030 greenhouse gas neutral standard. Also included in the Clean Energy Implementation Plan, or CEIP, are specific actions to ensure that this is an equitable transition, and then the energy efficiency and demand response. And Eric and Brooke, who are from our energy services group, they'll be covering that in the second presentation this hour. So I think at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Rich. We're going to provide a brief background of our current resource portfolio, because that's important to understand as we talk about how we plan to, what our plan is for this first CEIP to start progressing towards the greenhouse gas neutral requirement standard.
Thanks, Melissa. So I'm going to talk a couple of slides on our current resource portfolio. When I say resource, those are the resources that we have that are able to generate electricity to meet customer load, among other things. Currently, we have primarily our two biggest resources, as most people know, is the Wanapum Dam and the Priest Rapids Dam. Those combined, those are called the Priest Rapids Project, so you'll often hear us call it the PRP. So if I do say PRP, I mean the Priest Rapids Project, which includes both the Wanapum and the Priest Rapids dams. So Grant PUD has a physical rights to 63.31% of those two projects, and also the financial rights through some power sales contracts that we have with long power purchasers of 30%. So we have primarily pretty much the entire amount of between physical and financial rights to those two projects. Both of those projects are non-carbon emitting projects. They don't produce any carbon when they generate. And what we've done over the last several years, since starting about 2005, a little bit before actually, we're doing what we call slice sales. So they're entering into contract sales for 63.31% of that. So you'll often hear us talk about that as a slice sale, which we sell like a 10% slice or a 20% slice of our 63.31%. We do this because it helps maintain a strong financial position, and it also helps provide long-term low rates. And it does this by providing us ability to kind of hedge against what we call quantity risk or water risk. Really what it helps us do is it sells a portion of our project for a 3 to 5 year period, and it allows us not to have to take a low water risk year. So if we have a really low water year, that doesn't allow us to generate as much electricity as we are expecting. and that can cause us our retail sales, our wholesale sales to fluctuate. It causes us to actually have to dip into reserves, and this helps us not have to do that. This kind of keeps us nice and steady. And it also, the other thing that we do with these sales is we sell all the attributes from the project, and that includes the environmental attributes. So the contracts include the environmental attributes. So we can't claim any of the energy that we sell or that we provide to our customers as non-carbon because we've sold those attributes away. So that's very important to know, because when we look at the clean energy transformation plan, we're gonna talk about kind of how we see ourselves getting as we staying where we are, trying to get a little bit greener as we go into the future. The second thing to remember is we do have provisions within that contract to return what we refer to as incremental hydro, and that's for an RPS standard, a renewable portfolio standard, which is called I-937, or the Energy Independent Energy Act, I think it is. But there is some compliance that we have to have for that. So we do pull some of that back. And that's right now, that's at a 15% of our load needs to be served by renewable energy, which includes this incremental hydro. The contracts for these will begin to roll off at the end of 2023. The first we've got a 20% contract that will in the end of 2023, and with the final contracts will roll off in the end of 2025. So those kind of that's a background on the Priest Rapids project. In addition, we do have a couple smaller projects that we are able to use for generation, electrical generation. Two of them are small hydro projects. One is the Quincy Chute project. Columbia Basin Hydro actually owns that project, but we get the output and we operate that project for them. And same with the Pothole East Canal Headworks project, PEC project. It's a small hydro project owned by Columbia Basin Hydro, operated by Grant County PUD, and the output is from Grant County PUD. Both of those projects are non-carbon emitting. They're actually two projects on the canal system. So they do not have they are non-carbon emitting, and also the only thing they don't do is they do not produce any what we call I-937 or incremental hydro RECs. So we don't get any RECs from them to help us with our renewable portfolio standard requirements. We also do have a 12.54% output from Nine Canyon Wind Project, which is about 12 megawatts peak. 12 megawatts of capacity from Nine Canyon, again, a non-carbon renewable energy renewable project that does produce I-937 requirements. And then we do have a small amount of load that is a priority firm contract from the Bonneville Power Administration, BPA, and that's for our Grand Coulee load. They serve that load because it's obviously right next to the dam, and it's a little easier for us, and it's cheaper for us actually to have that energy served by them than to try to move transmission and distribution up into that project, up into that area. So that also is pretty close to being non-carbon. BPA does kind of a mix with their whole portfolio, and right now they're close to 95 to 97% carbon free with their portfolio. So those are our resources, our resource portfolio, as we like to say. I'm going to now hand it back off to Melissa. She'll continue to talk about the CEIP plan going forward.
All right, thanks, Rich. I think it was important that we provided that kind of what our current portfolio looks like, because that's the foundation we're going to look to build on for this first CEIP. So I think we wanted to start out with our guiding principles. I think there's two main pieces that have been kind of first and foremost as we've thought about what the CEIP looks like. We want to make sure that what we're doing is customer-driven clean energy solutions, and we want to also be cognizant of significant rate impacts, as well as ensure that the transition is achieved equitably amongst customers. So those are the guiding principles. We have two primary actions that we are going to take. I actually really quick wanted to say that as I go through this CEIP, it is draft. So this is what we're planning to do. We are looking for feedback today, and this is subject to Board of Commissioner approval. And so we will be looking at this feedback as we continue to prepare to present to the Commission, and we'll provide those dates on the Commission meetings and adoption at the end of the presentation. So there are two primary actions that we are looking at. We are, of course, going to use existing clean resources. So as Rich went through it, those are 9 Canyons, the Quincy Chute, and PEC hydro projects, some of the BPA energy, as well as the I-937 incremental hydro that we get from Priest Rapids project. And so, I think the thing that highlights here is it's not all of the PRP output, it's just the I-937 incremental hydro portion. The second primary action that we are going to look at for 22 through 25 is to use voluntary clean energy purchases. So Grant already has in place a couple options that allow customers to invest or drive additional investment in renewable purchases. And so we are looking to build upon those options to continue to drive towards our CETA requirement for 2030. So these are, there's 2 rate schedules right now that would, under those rate schedules, the energy that we would purchase would qualify for CETA. The first one is the specified source purchase schedule 13SS. And you may notice I've provided links throughout the presentation to additional information on our resource portfolio as well as our rate schedules. And so that's the link you see there. So this specified source schedule provides retail customers with the option to purchase energy with 0 emissions. And it is, that rate schedule is not available to all customers, although it is available to several different rate schedule, or it is available through several different rate schedules for customers to kind of add on this additional investment. In addition, we have alternative energy rate 13, and that one is open to all metered customers, and it does provide for the opportunity to voluntarily purchase additional qualified alternative energy. And so those 2 rate schedules are there. Our plan is to continue to promote those and maybe expand the take rate for those, or look to push for additional investments using those 2 rate schedules. And then I think we're always open to looking at potential modifications that would make it easier for customers to use those. So that is the foundation for our CEIP for 22 through 25. Here's a graph that kind of shows what we've just gone through. So you can see we have our forecasted load, and then these are the forecasted resources that we've just talked through. So you can see about 100 average megawatts or more from the I-937 incremental hydro from PRP. And then we have around 14 average megawatts of other renewables. So that's the 9 Canyon portion, Quincy Chute, BPA, that's the kind of aggregated total. And then you have on top of that, this green bar here, that is the potential rate schedule 13. So that's what we just talked through, those 2 different rate schedules. For 2022, we've actually made the purchase of specified source energy in this amount. Where it's shaded in the out years for 23 through 25, that signifies that that's not, we have not purchased that yet. That's a forecast. And so taking into account all those resources, we would be at about 30% on average over the 4-year CEI period of 22 through 25. So that's 30% of our load would be met with CETA compliant renewables. Before we get into the customer engagement piece, which we're hoping to get some feedback, I wanted to mention that as part of CETA, there is a requirement to do a longer term plan. It's a 10-year plan that's part of Grant's integrated resource plan. And so there will be additional opportunity for customers to engage when we go through this IRP process. And then we just wanted to make sure and provide a link to our current IRP, and then as well as let you know that that process will be kicking off in spring of 2022. And there is linkage between obviously the CEIP and the Clean Energy Action Plan. And so we just wanted to kind know of that additional planning process that we'll be going through. So I think we wanted to make sure and leave time to see if we got any feedback. It's very important. CETA emphasizes it, plus we feel it's very important to get customer input on the plan as Grant is looking at the actions it may take over the next several years. So we are reaching out to customers. This meeting is one way we are doing that. An additional way is we did create a CETA webpage. We will be posting this material as well as the recordings. There will be an email address on that website that allows for you to provide feedback at any time and about CETA. There's also going to be customer surveys going out to certain customers. This will be during energy audits or even through the mail or third-party agencies asking a series of questions. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight how we're going to be engaging the customers. I think right at this point, Rich, we were going to talk about, first of all, I guess energy services, there's a series of questions. They're going to be, there's kind of specific to their CETA requirements that they're looking at that they'll go through in their presentation. But as far as for the wholesale supply side or the energy piece of CETA, we wanted to put these two questions up to get the dialogue started. Certainly you can ask other questions or provide other feedback, but these were the questions that will be going out on the survey. And so we just wanted at this time to kind of open up the floor for discussion if there is any. And then our last slide is just going to be outlining the additional meetings and a link to our website.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. I think if you would like to answer this question, you can do so by either speaking up and answering the question, but also if you would like, you could put it in the chat function. Otherwise, you could email it to it's CETA@gcpud.org. So if you wanted to do that, that's also another way to do that. So we're not asking you to answer it. You don't have to answer it today, but if you did, we were hoping to get feedback on these two questions, just to kind of give us an indication of where our customers would like to see us move. At this point, I guess I'm going to ask if there are any questions. Go ahead and speak up. Otherwise, I guess we'll go ahead and move to the next steps and work through that process. All right. I guess we'll move to next steps. If you do have questions, just as this next step shows, you do have opportunities. We'll have another customer engagement. We do have a commission meeting open to the public. There'll be two meetings, October 26th, 2021. We'll have a presentation. And then there'll be time also on the November 9th meeting to comment on the CETA implementation or CEIP plan. Like I did mention, there is an email. You can email CETA@gcpud.org. We'll answer any questions from that. And then also, as Melissa mentioned, Grant PUD's 2022 IRP process will be starting very soon. That'll start probably in the spring, late winter, early spring timeframe, and there'll be opportunities for public to comment on that integrated resource plan process. So again, any questions? If not, we appreciate you listening to our presentation, but don't drop off. We've got another presentation by Energy Services. So I'll go ahead and move it over to, I think, Eric, right, Eric?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Eric Hector. I work in the Energy Services Department, primarily in conservation, helping people save energy, high bills, things like that. We do have a portion of the Clean Energy Transformation Act. We are focusing on helping customers lower their bills, try and help them lower their bills, kind of a long-term solution. We'll go through these slides here and kind of show you those. You can go to the next slide, please. So this is just kind of a basic definition of CETA as far as it pertains to us. We do have some targets we have to meet. So CETA requires 100% clean energy in Washington State by 2045. Has aggressive targets on the reduction of the energy burden for low-income households. So energy burden means the share of annual household income used to pay annual home energy bills. Energy assistance need under CETA, Grant PD will be required to demonstrate progress towards meeting a substantial portion of the county's energy assistant need, 60% by 2030 and 90% of that by 2050. So really, we're going to focus a lot on low-income customers, targeting them, trying to help them. There will be some roadblocks as far as working with landlords and customers, but we're going to do our best at that. So this is just the agenda slide here. Kind of outlines our presentation. Thank you. So here's some basic county census information. Grant County has about 97,000 residents, which is about 31,000 households. We have a 14.8% poverty rate, which equals about 4,500 homes. 59% of those homes are single family homes, 30% are manufactured, and 11% are multifamily, and 99% have electric heat. Next slide, please. These are some definitions. So we really focus on two parts of CETA. So we're looking for highly impacted communities. Highly impacted communities are a community designated by the Department of Health based on cumulative impact analysis, or a community located in census tracts that are fully or partially on Indian country. And vulnerable populations is the other part of that. So those are communities that experience disproportionate cumulative risk from environmental burdens due to adverse socioeconomic factors, including unemployment, high housing and transportation costs relative to their income, access to food and healthcare, sensitivity factors such as low birth weight, high rates of hospitalization. I know asthma is another one that's been talked about. Next slide, please. So how does Grant identify these communities? So we have a map that we work off of. It's called the Washington Environmental Health Disparities Map. So those kind of target, or they show communities in our county that have a higher percentage of these disadvantaged people. So we're going to target ones on those maps that are considered a 9 or a 10, which means that they have a higher rate of people in there. There's also Share the Warmth. We're going to use Share the Warmth customer applications, people that have applied for help through the PUD. They've been income qualified, so we'll be able to target them specifically. Senior and disability discount rate applicants, and working with third-party agencies to identify customers. So we have a lot of third-party agencies that help out. OIC, Salvation Army, the Housing Authority. They do a lot of income verification, work with low-income people all the time. So we've reached out to them. They're going to help us as far as maybe handing out surveys, asking these customers, ways that we could help them, and letting them know that we have programs. Next slide. So how does Grant plan on meeting the energy assistance? So we've broken up our county according to that map into manageable sections. We've broken like Moses Lake into several areas. Some of the other outlying cities will be probably just divided into like quarters so we can kind of target them. It's going to be kind of a long process, but we're hoping to get through everybody eventually. So things we're going to do while we're doing these, we're looking to give them energy conservation tips. We have a flyer that we're going to hand out to the customers while we're there. A survey. We're going to do direct install of LED light bulbs while we're at their homes. Inspecting the homes, doing blower door and duct testing to test for air leakage. Weather stripping replacements, another possibility, and give them recommendations and information on the assistance programs, including like the third-party agencies that could help them. Next slide. Thank you. So part of the CETA process is outreach and customer interaction. Today's meeting is one of those. We're also going to be sending out direct mailers to some of our customers, probably the customers that are already on our discounted rates or low income rates. Hanging door tags is a possibility, surveys, mailers, and again, working with the third party agencies. Next slide. We kind of touched on audits already, but that's a big part of what we're going to do, is auditing people's homes, looking for ways to help them improve their electricity usage, be a little more efficient, give them some ideas, tips, maybe help them with some upgrades, hopefully work towards offering programs to help them with things like insulation and other stuff. Next slide. So potential future plans. Nothing's really set in stone yet. We're still in the planning process of this, but these are some ideas we'd come up with as far as things to look for in the future. Time of use rates could possibly be one, or additional discounted rates. Web-enabled thermostats is another one, as we look towards things like demand response for residential. There are some barriers to that, though, with our relatively small residential base, and Energy Star appliance upgrades. Next slide. So, like the presentation before, we have some survey questions. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to maybe answer these or put them in the chat or the email. Feel free to speak up if you want. But these are just a few questions that we came up with to put into the presentation today. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take those. Okay. Thanks, Melissa.
Sure.
Thanks, Eric. I think this concludes our presentation. Again, if you have any questions, we can take those now, either in the chat or if you want to orally ask them. Otherwise, if you have any other questions, you can email that CEPA@gcpud.org, and we can answer them also when we get those in. Also, don't forget, we do have two more presentations that will be with the commission, and those are October 26th and November 9th. Otherwise, I guess we'll go ahead and end the presentation if nobody has any outstanding questions. Otherwise, we'll see you maybe at 6 o'clock. Feel free to join at 6 also. Thanks, everyone.